All right. Hi, Erin.
Good morning.
All right. So I know that there's a lot to talk about today. We were talking about creating communities of connection, and so really excited to hear what you have to say on that.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to talk about communities connection because there's lots of different, pieces of that conversation and how really it's a great tool that we can use as leaders and people leaders as we drive our organizational culture.
Right. Well, I know that you're in Durango along with Durango, Colorado, along with Wendy and myself. And so we have a big Durango crowd here today. Yeah, so I just spent my last weekend up near Silverton looking at the changing of the colors. Have you been up the mountain lately?
I have not been north lately, but I was wondering, it's nice, you can start to see a little bit of color pop here in town, which is a little bit later this fall than normal, I think. But Silverton, are they going off?
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's, as you come down the mountain towards your old workplace there, and it's has not happened yet. So I think that's going to be the next 3 weeks or so.
Yeah. I bet it goes fast too this year. If it's
I
little bit later.
I think it's going to be fast. It's like you got to get it on like the perfect day, and then there's going to be some storm, and all the leaves are going to be gone.
Yeah. Were you officially a leaf peeper, Sam? Did you stop and pull off on the side of the road and slow down traffic and everything?
I went to my camping spot and witnessed it all from there. So.
Oh, that's the best place to witness it from.
Yeah.
Or if you're moving on your own feet, right?
Right. So how about
I drove up to Montrose last weekend. So I went all the way through Ouray, and so got to see everything all the way, and then did some hiking in Silverton last weekend too. It was really beautiful. Yeah.
Nice.
Howard's joining us. So in case we don't forget him like we have before.
Hey, Howard.
Hi there.
So Erin, to introduce you to Howard. Howard is he's over in New York, and so experiencing a bit of a different weather than we have here right now. But it's starting to get colder, as I understand, right?
Just starting a little chillier, but sun.
Yeah, beautiful.
Hi, Howard. Nice to see you.
Hi there, Erin. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, so we just have about a few more minutes before we get started, and
well, as you can see, I'm on the other side of the mountains where I'm in the tundra. So
yeah.
As you can see, I can't see any beautiful yellow trees up here.
But you spent the summer in a beautiful area, right? So Char,
actually, I was up in Estes Park for a chunk of the summer, and now I'm in Littleton. And yeah, I would agree. I think even on this side of the mountains, it's taking a little bit of time for the color to come in. I guess, I don't know, but I need to get up in the mountains and see too.
Yeah.
Now that I've moved down to Littleton, it just seems chillier than normal. I haven't looked it up yet. Just seems a little cold.
Well, you're used to those warm climates, and so maybe that's.
What does that make me? Cold-blooded or warm-blooded?
I wouldn't call it that. All right. So, as we go into this, I'm going to go ahead we're at the top of the hour now, so I'm going to go ahead and start our multicast, and we'll be off to the races. So just one moment, and we'll get started. Perfect. Okay. All right, Char, you want to take us to the introduction?
You bet. Well, welcome everyone. We really enjoy having you here with us today at the People Strategy Forum. And this is the place where we engage, energize, and elevate your employees and your companies. So be it that you're an employee at a company or you're a leader or an HR professional, this is the place you come to talk about new and progressive people strategy forums and processes. So I'm here to introduce my team. Again, I'm Char Miller. I'm a people strategist. I have many years of traditional HR, talent management, strategy background, and I've also had the pleasure of running my own businesses and coaching businesses. So I utilize a lot of my people strategy forums. Also joining me today, we have Wendy Graham. And Wendy, you're a people strategist too, more in the learning and development and talent management space, right?
Correct.
So welcome. And then we have
Thank you for
Howard.
having me.
Sure. And then we have Howard. All right, I'm going to butcher your last name, Howard.
Nizewitz, long I.
Nizewitz. I just realized I was about to butcher that. Rewards and systems strategist, joining us all the way from New York. Absolute incredible mind and a genius when it comes to compensation and total rewards. And then Sam Reeve is a reward strategist as well. Also the founder and owner and CEO of ComTeam, who's really been the champion in sponsoring all of these events for many years now, going on to several. So welcome everyone. So today I'm so excited that we have as our expert contributor, Erin Hyder, and as she's the assistant city manager of the city of Durango. So today we have 3 of us from Durango, which is Wendy and Erin and Sam. So Erin, we are excited that you're a strategic leader, very progressive human resources and business leadership, and in both private and public sectors. And then also what I love this, that you're a culture champion, a black belt trained process improvement professional. And what I'm excited about most of all, and everyone that has heard me, is that you're going to be talking about leading with heart, which is absolutely my passion. Everybody has known I'm all about HR with heart. So what you're here to talk with us today about is creating communities of connection and really talk about how we create these types of cultures. So Erin, would you like to introduce yourself? And I'd love to hear about the summit that you've recently gone to. So how are you, Erin?
Well, I'm doing well. Great day here in Durango. I had to laugh. I was thinking about my 2 teenage girls. If they even knew that someone labeled me as an expert at anything, they would probably be laughing in whatever they're doing right now. So I hope this is recorded so I can let them know that somebody thinks I'm an expert at something.
Yes. Yeah. Put that on your label today. You are an expert.
I will. I'll share the link later on. Let's see here, because to them, I'm just an Uber driver, right?
Yeah.
But in the rest of life, just a little bit about me. I've been here in Durango for 20 plus years. I'm currently the assistant city manager for the city of Durango. My previous experience has really all been in leading the people function or providing support in a people-centric space throughout my roles in my career. I spent 20 plus years in the ski industry. I had a brief adult internship in the global payment processing world, which was really a great opportunity to do something totally different than the ski industry. And then now I've moved into the municipality space. And I've really enjoyed the mixture of seeing how things work differently in the public and private space, but also how they work very similarly, especially with people. My promotion to assistant city manager is recent. And just last week, as you mentioned, the summit, I really referenced, I appreciate our city manager's appreciation for highlighting and elevating the people path and the experience that comes from leading people that I bring to the table as a complementary and, an elevated space of leadership for our whole organization. Don't always have to come down the same path that we all expect to see in whatever space we come in, right? So grateful for that.
So Erin, I would love to just hear a little bit about, because you come from a variety of different diverse industries, and I know you're an outdoor enthusiast and so forth. So I would love to hear 2 things. Now, what's been your experience of being in HR in these different types of industries? Outdoor sports and more of the laced up financial industry of payments. And it seems to be significantly different culture. But before we get there, what types of outdoor sports do you participate there in Durango?
Well, let's see. So I'm a big trail runner. admittedly. I prefer like ultra distances. And, I got into that because it was my way of maybe escaping hearing mom. My whole theory around that is, hey, if I'm 15 miles away from the house, I can't hear somebody asking for something that they could do for themselves. So I probably could have found something else to get into to avoid hearing that all the time, but that really became my escape to have some time for myself. I love to ski. We're big boat people. We love to raft. We like to mountain bike. And, everyday life, I'm really, unfortunately, a pretty competitive rec game participant. So if you want to have a cornhole tournament, if we're going to play ping pong, if we're going to play horse, unfortunately, it, has its pros, its cons. I'm there to win at some game that doesn't really have a whole lot of material impact on the world.
That's great.
Yeah.
So tell us about your experience in the variety of industries, working in HR and these different industries. How's it different from working in the financial industry, the outdoor sports, and now municipalities? What is the core thing that you're seeing that's different from your experience?
Yeah, I think if I could pinpoint a difference, it's the in each different space, folks kind of lead with what they know is what is the truth, the commonly held truth, right? Like, so if you've only ever worked in municipalities, you're used to it operating very one way, like we operate within this box. Like the financial, like payment space, it's a little bit like that too, but their box just looks different. And then in the recreation and hospitality industry, I think the people working in the space, it kind of depends on what level, because it really provides like a very diverse level of opportunity, like jobs that are available to folks. So you get folks that it's their first job, or they're there for their affinity of whatever in that space. For me, working in the ski industry, a lot of folks wanted to work there because they had an affinity for skiing. They weren't necessarily there to make a career. But on the other end of the spectrum of working with folks in that space, you do have the folks that it is their career. So that, to me, being able to target your people strategies that really address a very diverse range of people's needs at different parts of their career paths was the biggest difference. The other ones are very much more in that seasonal aspect of that workspace, does add a little bit different approach than, a full-time year-round. I go to work, this is my job for however long, forever. I think folks have a different expectation of what that support and that goes along with it. Now, what I will say the similarities are, and then all those spaces, because I think that's really important, is ultimately, regardless of what industry you work in, what I have found is people just want to be seen, heard, and valued. And that is very much a similarity across, I think, all spaces.
No kidding. So yeah, and that's part of all of this that we're going to be talking about today is building those internal communities that the sense of belonging and so forth that companies can provide. And I think that people are really looking for nowadays, especially after being isolated for several years in the crazy environment we had in the past few years. And now that I think connection is something that we're all looking for. So
Absolutely.
I know that you were a recent speaker at the local development summit, is that right?
I had the great opportunity. So the La Plata Economic Development Alliance hosts an annual summit about this time every year. And the theme each year, it shifts. But the last couple of years, I've really been impressed with Mike French. He's the executive director, and their team and their focus on highlighting the power of people and how we leverage our people to really achieve business achievements, and how do we build our businesses and grow our businesses, particularly here in the region, and how important the people are. So the themes have been very people centric. So last week, let's see here, I partnered up with Suzanne Fair, who is a leadership coach and facilitator with Real Ideal Coaching. And we hosted a breakout session on, I can't remember the title of it right now exactly, but it was essentially how do you leverage your culture to retain and recruit top talent? And really, how are you combating the key reasons associated with the Great Resignation? So powerful conversation, very timely, very relevant of what we're seeing in the workplace right now.
Right, and that's part of the conversations I've been having a lot lately with clients, because they're seeing a lot of pressures as far as pay right now and across different industries. There's trying to keep up with it all. We were looming inflation, potential slowdown in the economy in certain industries, and so forth. And they're saying, okay, we've taken all we can take. We cannot keep up with these crazy offers that people are asking for in the marketplace. What else can we do? And I think that just brings it into what you just mentioned, that having that really working on that employee value proposition, that workforce experience, and how to establish that. So in your breakout session that you went through, what were the key points?
Yeah, I'd love to chat about it more. So we really, I want to say too, we had a couple great sources that we really leveraged in this conversation. So, but Dr. I think it's Donald Soul and Charlie Soul. They are father, son, and they're researchers, and they recently published a white paper through the Sloan Management Business Review. So a lot of this is referenced. That's a great source. And what we talked a lot about is, what if you could identify the key reasons people indicated as to why they left their jobs during the Great Resignation or the Great Reassessment. Most people, like I heard compensation, Sam, but compensation is in the top 10. It's not in the top 5. So if you, what we really went over is, hey, what are the top reasons why people are leaving their organizations they're currently in? And culture is by far the #1 indicator. In fact, I think they reference it's 10.4 times more powerful as an indicator than compensation to indicate attrition. So beyond culture, the other top reasons were things like, so if we have culture, and we can go into what the components of culture really are, but like high levels of innovation, organizations that have so much innovation, although a lot of us are attracted to work for organizations that have innovation. Once you get in it, what it feels like to have the pressure of innovation, the constant changing of priorities, the work-life balance associated with it. The lack of recognition or holding people accountable for not doing their job, right? Folks indicated like purely just even the response to COVID. Like what was their company's response to COVID? How were they treated, particularly in that time frame, was one of their key reasons of leaving. So if we acknowledge that culture, particularly toxic culture, right? Because sometimes we have to talk about culture in the inverse, because a lot of us that's really resonating. Like you can almost identify what it feels like in a toxic culture to work backwards. When we talk about culture and how critical it is, and the 5 components that really drive culture, and it's things that you would expect: inclusion, respect, like integrity, ethical organizations, right? I think what's interesting is when we talk about siloing between departments or between teams or between people becomes like where it moves from normal siloing to where people or teams or departments are intentionally trying to harm another department. So a cutthroat environment, so you can't get something done. And then finally, poor management. And we know, like we all have heard the saying of people don't leave companies, they leave, bad bosses or poor managers or leadership. And so when we think about those things, what I find really powerful when I reflect on that is that description of the key components of culture. To me, that's like what it feels like. And they all inflict a very emotional response to what it feels like if it's not inclusive, or if you're not respected, or if somebody's not doing what they say they're going to do, versus sometimes we think about workplace culture of work-life balance, or performance management, or career opportunities, or those to me are all very much the what's. But really, when I think about culture and what creates a toxic culture, it's the how and what it feels like once we're in it, and why we don't want to stay in it. Particularly when culture, we all have those things that work, probably not in your comp team world, but maybe things that work are annoying. But it's when it moves from annoying to where it moves to where it is so unmanageable that it becomes like that toxic nature, and where then somebody chooses to leave that environment. So we talked a lot about like really the culture aspect. To your point, I think as organizations, we have two different paths we have to be like addressing really concurrently, right? Our systems path, right? So that's like, are our wages competitive? Is our structure defined? Is how we operate defined? Like that's to me a system. And then the other path is really our culture. So we can't wait to address all of our systems things and then address our culture, because if somebody joins our team and they get into our system but our culture sucks, they're not going to say. So then we're just going to repeat the cycle of like churning through people. Well, where this is really something so quantitative and it has a quantitative outcome that we have to put as much focus and attention on our culture and how we do things as we do with our systems and our framework. So I hear a lot of times too, people are like, well, it doesn't matter how cool it is to work for us, right? But if I don't pay them, they're not coming anyways. But I think in a long term, we're very much in a point in time problem right now. I think long term, we have to be addressing both. And culture is not ping pong tables or pet insurance, right? It's those things we just talked about. It's inclusion, respect, ethical, interdepartmental cooperation, and effective people leaders, not effective task managers.
So I had the unique opportunity. I'd like to just share a quick story, because we learned last week it's good to tell stories. But I actually was hired by a particular majorly known organization to actually be a transplant in the HR department, because they were having a problem working with the IT department. And I'll just tell you, it was absolutely eye-opening out of all my 25 plus years of working in HR and talent management to see exactly what you were talking about. A big system project needed to be rolled out. A big system impacted every employee in the organization, but they had a roadblock because of the cultural differences between the two departments. And I found out that it wasn't really my quote, lack of IT experience is the reason why they brought me into that organization. It was actually to identify culturally what was going on. And ultimately what it was people felt threatened because there were shadow positions in both departments doing the same job. Mm-hmm. And so there was an aspect of new positions being created to do what other people in other departments already do. And then also I noticed where sometimes some companies hire tons of project managers because the two departments can't work together. So project managers are that liaison to try to help departments work better together. So then we'd end up with 200 project managers across the organization, which is such a waste of resources and everything, right? So yeah, it's serious business. I mean, major system projects can't move forward if we have this cultural issue going on, a sabotage or whatever you want to call it culturally between the two departments. So I think you really hit the nail on the head with that, Erin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have witnessed dynamically different business outcomes that you've seen come from, a team that's like really united, has a sense of purpose, and really like, a bomb culture versus a team that is like their culture has essentially bombed, like right, the exact inverse. And you can see exactly the difference, and it's a lot of those key pieces, right? And you made mention of a lot of those things like trust, right? Like is the focus on the sense of self or their sense of team, Are they like not trusting like that person, the shadowing people, because of their lack of capability or their lack of integrity? Or is it just like, you know, likability to me really means to not like popularity, but instead, you know, a cultural fit? Do they align with the cultural values? Those are all key components when you're
Well, if
assessing
two
why,
senior leaders can't communicate and have respect for one another at the top, so to speak,
right?
it is going to ripple all the way through, and employees are very smart. They know, they can see if there's an issue, a personality conflict with my senior leader, the VP of this area, and a VP of another area. If there's a cultural conflict between those, it's going to ripple throughout the whole organization.
Well, absolutely.
And
I mean, when you talk about leadership and like when we're leading teams, I mean, pockets of toxicity are directly correlated with the leadership associated with the teams. And as leadership, like whatever level of leadership that we're in, you know, what we tolerate, we advocate, right? So in whatever we allow to continue to happen and what we're demonstrating for others is what's going to be demonstrated as this is the acceptable way of how we do things. So there, you know, when you tie that back to poor management, right, as a key indicator of a driver of culture, like we know how powerful like our influence as leaders is on our teams and our organization. So yeah, that's all. It's really powerful. I mean, we could talk about this topic probably for a couple of days, but I don't know if we have that much time.
well, I definitely think of companies, and I was talking to a biology person once, and they described to me companies like the human body. I mean, every single organ in that body has a function, and every single cell in that body has a function, and everything in between. So if one aspect of that body is ill, it's going to impact the entire body, you know. That's why each area needs to be looked at from a healthy standpoint. And it's all about the heart in the middle of it all. But no, it's because I think every organization is like a small or an actual human being. I know every single department culture is. So
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, that reminds me of Sam, is it okay if I make a comment, or were you going to ask a question?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so when we talk about like the story you shared, right, and how the heart is really the connector across all the different like functionality of the system, right? I think when I think about the components that I described and that were highlighted in that study, you know, to me, they inflict an emotional response, but when you look at it from a much bigger topic, we're talking about like, how well do people feel like they belong? And like how powerful the sense of belonging is. And, you know, like, even though most of us join an organization or a team because we want to be part of something bigger, but at the same time, by doing so, we don't want to lose our individuality or to be recognized for either our individual contributions or like, you know, our perspective that is different and it should be different than, you know, and we're all, however a billion of people of individuals we have on our planet, we have the same amount of individual like perspectives and experiences and what we bring to the table. So I think the powerfulness of sense of belonging is how do we ensure that you get to be you and you're part of a group, but when you're part of a group, you don't have to check yourself at the door. And if you show up as yourself, there's not fear that you're going to be kicked off the island, right? So belonging is that you're not just like everybody else, but instead you get to be you yourself. And there's an acceptance to it. And there's not risk of not being part of the group anymore because you are yourself or you show up as yourself. So that the whole other concept and discussion around belonging and how do we create a sense of belonging and how important like inclusion and respect and integrity all really flow into that that bigger topic.
So with all these different things that you're talking about, the heart is the center of the organism overall, and one of the pieces that we need to do to create an organization with connection is to feel safe and so forth. So how do we go about doing that in an organization, making people feel safe and as a way of being part of that community.
Yeah. So it's interesting, you know, when you talk about if we can bridge over to connection, it's like you mentioned like safety, but like psychological safety. A lot of people want to know like, hey, what's the secret sauce to high performing, really engaged culture? And I think it's psychological safety. How do you get to be you and you feel safe in that space to do so? So if we delve into then connection, how do we feel connected to others? You know, connection to me is the best engagement strategy that there is. And because what it really does is when we, once again, we're facilitating and like really asking for, like creating opportunities for a connection, we're accelerating trust, we're building rapport amongst people that may not necessarily have regular interactions with each other. And it does create that safety across like cross-functional teams or cross-departmental teams or like folks that you wouldn't normally like necessarily engage with. So by doing so, you know, so that's what we talk about a lot, recognizing all those things, like, right, these are a lot of topics that are all nested within each other. So what we talk about a lot here and what I talk about is how are we as leaders actively participating and facilitating opportunities to create communities of connection. And I think that's your question, Sam, is so how do we do that and what does that look like? And I think it can show up in so many different ways, depending on your team and what's most meaningful for your group of folks. I think it's important to recognize too, that just because, you know, having, you know, I don't know, sending somebody like an anniversary card or taking an individual out for an anniversary lunch for their work anniversary might not be as meaningful as how do we have like a social event where everybody's involved, because we have to respect that people also want to feel connected to people in different ways. So having kind of an arsenal of different ways of creating communities connection, I think is really important too. It's not like a one size fits all. And if we try to approach people with a blanket approach, I think we all recognize that doesn't necessarily work. And taking that step of finding out what's meaningful and what motivates individual groups of people or individuals themselves is really, when you say, how do I do this? I mean, that's what we have to do. We have to stop having, like, make it really targeted.
Mm-hmm.
So in our organization here, we've tried a couple different things, and we do a couple different things to really create those communities of connection. Let's see here. So if we talk about like hosting Zoom meetings, sometimes, or even like regular scheduled like agenda meetings, or like how do you make those feel like you just don't get people in, we're here to do our business and we get out the door, right? How do we actually recognize and acknowledge and accept the whole humans coming to the meeting, not just the work human? And so, you know, one thing that a tool that we've given out and encourage our folks to use, and I use it, is like on Zoom meetings, is we always start a meeting with like a silly question, or like it doesn't have to be silly, but it's like, hey, Wendy, today we're going to talk about like everybody's favorite type of ice cream. And then Wendy's going to tell me that she likes avocado lime sorbet. And I'm going to tell her that's gross, but I respect that. But instead, I like peanut butter and chocolate ice cream. And so, you know, we use that kind of like a tactic to use to like start the meeting with a human aspect. And we get to have that connection where like, maybe I'll see Wendy like down the street and I'll be like, oh, are you getting your avocado lime ice cream? Right. So you're creating conversation without, and then you can jump into the work. It allows us to ground ourselves a little bit as humans before we really jump into the work. I think that's a way to do it, especially in the space where we have a lot of folks still have a hybrid work environment, right? Or we have a very remote work environment, or even like now the city is operating very much in person with a lot of our meetings. I think it's really important to still like at least start with something beyond, okay, agenda one is we're going to achieve this, right? So that's a powerful way. And it creates, like I said, you're just creating conversation where it allows people to show up as themselves But even though I don't like avocado lime ice cream, I'm not going to vote her off the island. I'm just going to acknowledge it. And then we can kind of have like, you know, some banter back and forth about it. Wendy, I don't know if you like avocado lime ice cream or not, but.
No, but Wendy, I know that you have a lot of these types of icebreakers too that you use in your meetings, right?
Yeah, I use a free tool called Mentimeter, and I'll put the link in the chat for those of you that want to check it out. And there's lots of other great ones like Poll Anywhere or Poll Everywhere. I always get it mixed up, but there's lots of these free tools, and you know, you can just use them just as a way, or just to have a conversation, especially if you're in person, to have a way to just talk about, it could be related or it could not be related, but to Erin's point, like, it's first of all a way to clear the slate. So whatever you've just come from, now you're fresh, now you're connected in. This is like when we talk about like cross meridian, getting our brains, you know, right brain, left brain to sync up to the moment and not be thinking about what just happened or worrying about what's going to happen or thinking about, you know, what you're going to fix for dinner or blah, 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 blah. You know, it just brings you into the moment. So it has that effect. And it has that effect of getting to know someone on the team, getting to know each other and building a little rapport, and also allowing me, I say, like, you know, if I come and I zip up, you know, and leave my personal self over there or behind the curtain, it's just like unzipping a little bit, right? And it's building a little bit of trust. Hopefully they don't heckle me too much for eating the avocado lime sorbet, but I haven't tried that, but I'm going to say that I probably love it because I think that avocados are nature's miracles. So that's my vote. And I love lime and lemon. So how could I not like that?
Right. See, and like right there itself, I think what's powerful in, you know, Brene Brown in her book, Atlas of the Heart, talks a lot about connection. And she talks about like how if you were just not going to like, what can you learn about people that you wouldn't just learn by showing up to a staff meeting? Like, what would I know about you? And so how do we create those opportunities to get to know about you, what you're willing to share, right? That's appropriate. But then how, like, that's creating connection is like, how do we get beyond the work surface of the human and actually get to know the human? You know, another powerful thing we did back in in the summer of 2020, I was still in the ski industry. So folks that are definitely, regardless of your position, you probably have some affinity for being outdoors, or you have a passion, or you're not used to being, you know, wanting to be stuck at your desk in front of a computer screen all the time. One thing, recognizing that there was this appetite for some kind of connection beyond like computer screens, but kind of balancing like a safety perspective and people's comfortability for meeting, we launched, I hosted these coffee in the parks is what I call them. And they were all small groups. They were, I probably should have had a permit because that was in the parks, but don't tell anybody. But I mean, they were like 5 people, right? And what it did is we just launched, and at first people were like, what is this coffee in the park thing? And it was really, there was no agenda. It was a way though we could meet outside. I would bring coffee, and then we would just like chat, and it would draw folks. It was intentional to ask people from different departments to come. It was really powerful not to have an agenda because it forced general conversation and connection. And then we could also learn what each department was doing, what kind of obstacles they were facing right now, particularly as we're responding to the pandemic, what they found success in, you know, and people got to really, I didn't even have to drive the conversation, right? I just happened to be there. But if in the conversation got stuck, I can move it along. But naturally, it allowed the folks, it was a way and an outlet and a venue for people to connect because they were looking for that way to connect, but not necessarily on a focused item. And so that was something we did that worked really well then. And in fact, I still host those here for the city. And it's a way, we have almost 400 full-time employees here at the city. And it's a way for me to get to really have great conversation with folks I don't generally get to interact with on a daily basis. And I get to hear different perspective. And, you know, I keep them really small. I do personally, that's how I like it, because then you can have a more meaningful conversation around it.
So can
Well,
we dive a little bit more deeply? I would just love to hear on how those start out. I mean, when you're creating this event, this in the park and so forth, and I mean, myself, I'd be thinking, geez, how are we gonna, we're just gonna show up there and just let it flow? I mean, what's your way of getting it going?
Like as the facilitator? Yeah. So I think there's two pieces here, like in the communication out, you have to give enough guardrails that people have an idea of what this could be like. Like I really had to say, there's no agenda. I'm not here to solicit your feedback of, like to be a complaint center. That's what I mean. Obviously, I'm there to solicit feedback, but I had to frame it like this isn't a complaint session. This is, come with, I'm happy to hear, like, I answer your questions. If you like, you don't have a way to connect with leadership throughout the organization, I'm happy to answer the questions, point you in a direction. Heck, we can talk about the weather if you want, right? And so outlining what the expectation is up front has worked really well. I also had to like be okay with, at first, it took a couple times for folks to maybe be like, what is this? And to sign up. But then at the end, I'd always ask them like, hey, if you found this beneficial, please go ahead and share with other folks within your team. So when these invites come up, like they want to sign up for them. Then once we get there, like we had one just last week. Like I really like to take advantage of our really nice long seasons we have of beautiful Durango weather that we can be outside. Even now, we had a mixed group. We had someone from the library, parking, utilities, and community development, right? So, and then engineering. Talk about a diverse kind of group that could be in that setting. And really, we just started it off with talking about the queen of, because I shared I'm okay with sharing my youngest daughter, her name is Lunch Pie. Lunch Pie is really pissed about Charles being the new queen. Because, and Sarah, she's on our parking team. She's originally from Britain. And then it kind of just, the conversation just evolves. And what I find is, so sometimes just leading with something that like I'm willing just to throw out there, but the conversation just starts. Once people also get more comfortable in the conversation, what I find is almost always like about halfway through, people become more comfortable, like they belong, because like, right, everybody, like I started off with like the queen, who I really know nothing about, but they connected with someone. And then the conversation evolved and snowballed a little bit. But halfway through, what I see a pattern of is people are more comfortable with either asking a question about like an initiative, or maybe they have a question about a people decision that's organizational wide, that like they kind of were like, should I ask this? But they kind of were like, should I not ask this? Am I comfortable to do so? And so then it creates an environment where people feel like it's safe to have those conversations and talk about the things that folks are talking about back in the departments. And now they can ask like right there, even if they were kind of scared to in the first place. It's also a place for people, some people show up with lists, no doubt. And that's great too, right? Because then we can be like, this is awesome, we got a list. So it takes a little bit of work, and you have to, like, it goes back to how are you intentionally actively engaging and facilitating the community in which you want to see.
So Erin, I just want to, I'm going to pick on Wendy. Hey, Wendy. So we had a team building. We had a team building where our colleague Becca coordinated, remember this, the botanical garden, and we all were outside, and Wendy and I got a chance to partner up. So I'm going to pick on you, Wendy, because it was all about looking. It was like, what do you call that? What kind of hunt is that?
Scavenger
Wendy?
hunt. It was a scavenger hunt.
So Wendy and I were trooping off in the botanical gardens. We're looking for all these flowers and plants and trees and sculptures. And the funniest thing, I mean, I don't know Wendy that well. We worked together at comp team, but it's not like we really hung out a lot in the park together or anything. So I looked over at Wendy, and she's like, okay, we found this, we found that. Okay, we found this, we found that. And then, and don't look it up on Google, because that's not following the rules and this and that. And then I finally said, you know what, Wendy, I think I've realized you're the competitive one and I'm not. I'm the one that wants to walk around and smell the flowers and kind of socialize a little bit. I don't care about this list. And Wendy, you're the one that wants to get everything checked off the list. So what
So
is your insight on that?
I've been told that I'm selectively competitive, and that means I'm selectively competitive about dance. So don't even take me on in a dance competition because I will win. And apparently I'm good at scavenger hunts, and I've actually like been working on my application for this TV show called the Amazing Race. It's like you go around the world. It's like a giant scavenger hunt around the world. So I'm just putting that out there in case the producers of that show just want to skip the application process and just pick me, because for some reason I guess I'm like kind of competitive about scavenger hunts. And I guess my third point in defense of myself is I felt like Becca had done so much work to put this like amazing scavenger hunt together and to bring our team together and to explore this like really beautiful garden that's also one of our clients. And so we're really just a cool way for us to get to know our client on a deeper level and what they do and like get even more passionate about them. And so I think I felt like this pressure to really take it seriously because this is her passion as plants, and that and her passion also is like building our team. So I think in defense, I didn't want to come back and just been like, oh, we didn't do it.
Yeah, but did
But
you
the
notice,
truth
Wendy,
was,
at the end, she didn't even
yeah,
announce the winner?
well,
So
yeah, I didn't care about being a winner, but I wanted to at least show that we tried. But the truth is that if we had just had a walk around the park and gotten to know each other, that would have been successful, right? That would have been like the whole purpose of it. But I felt like it would have also mattered to her that we cared about the questions and stuff like that. So that's all I can say in defense of myself.
But another thing that I think that's really important that you just mentioned, Wendy, is that when we get connected to our colleagues, we start caring about their personal initiatives, such as you mentioned, that the flowers were really important for Becca, and and Howard. I know Howard's a great lover of music and so forth. I mean, these things are important, and they bring color and fun to the workplace, right?
I mean, I think that's a key for me personally. Like, I like to have fun, and most of us like there should be some aspect of fun or enjoyment. And so I think making things fun is a really like that's simple too. I think if I'm thinking about like I have a whole list of different ways like that are anything from formal to informal ways of how we create communities of connection. If I were like sitting here and thinking like, man, this seems like I want to do this, but I don't know how I can do it. I think it doesn't have to be complex. And it just has to like start simple, even with like starting with a question at the beginning of a meeting, or, if you're not writing like what's meaningful to your team, you can just write a card to somebody like when there's a meaningful anniversary or a meaningful event happen, like in extending a personal, like genuine and authentic personal like appreciation and acknowledgement for a person, that you're creating a community connection right there. Like it could be one-on-one. It doesn't have to be like a larger group. So I think that's a big takeaway is it doesn't have to be super formalized. It doesn't have to be like an organizational wide recognition program. In fact, communities of connections are not recognition programs. They're like how we are engaging with our team and making sure that we have this sense of belonging, and that's going to leverage really our workplace culture and what people stay for and what they want to come for too. So,
I just want to jump in because I think this is so important, because one of the things we do with here at CompTeam is we use a tool called TMA, and it's similar to it has a assessment piece like people know strengths finders, Myers-Briggs, predictive index, there's a wide variety, and it's not just an assessment tool. But where I'm going with this is a big event to somebody who does not get their energy from big events, right? That does not feel good. That's like the opposite of feeling part of a community. That feels like I'm being pressured to do something that actually gives me anxiety, And so when we think about how people, like how they are naturally prefer to operate, some people prefer more one-on-one or a small group, that kind of thing. And so I think it's an important thing that you're saying, because we also need to know our audience, and we need to know what motivates them and how they want to participate in the community. Like the pressure to do something after work, we don't know what's going on with them, what's going on in their home life, what's going on with their family or whatever. And so being able to find times at work, maybe it's too stressful for them to have it happen during work because that's their work time. Maybe they want it outside of work. Everybody sort of has different things. So I guess a couple things that popped up for me as you were talking is you are connecting with lots of different people in lots of different, areas that maybe you don't normally interact with, to try to hear from them. Like, what do they want? What do they need? And then knowing our people and genuinely caring about them. Like Becca, it was like the perfect project for her. She cares about team building. She cares about plants. And she cares about our clients, and so it was like an amazing combination for her. It was a shining moment for her, to be given that opportunity to create that scavenger hunt and bring our team together and organize that. So finding that little nugget with each of these people, like where they can shine, I think is so great.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say is, how do we leverage our folks' gifts? Because all of our gifts come and look a different way, right? So I think when we talk about like hosting events, right, which like maybe not everybody wants to be part of a large group, right, and they don't necessarily want to be on display, they want to have an active part, but like how do we create other tasks involved with that larger group where we can then leverage other people's gifts? And let me give you an example. So years ago, like a long time ago, at the ski area, we tried to have like some kind of social event during the middle of the day during the off seasons, the shoulder seasons, as a way for everybody to gather. But I didn't want to like cater food. I didn't want to cook food for 150 people. So we came up with this idea as we were going to host a chili cook-off, where the gathering was set, right? And then a way to get around cooking the food is we needed at least 10 people to sign up to submit their chilies. We paid for all the ingredients. So we had a team that was going to cook. That was their kind of gift, right? And they enjoyed the competitiveness. They enjoyed, having their name known. We needed a team to sign up to be judges. So they were really good at eating all the different kinds of chili, which sounded really brave to me because like, I'm not going to eat 10 different kinds of chili, but so we needed a team of judges. We needed a team that was really good at organizing the event, like so think about when you talk about the folks that are like, I want to be part in the middle of a group, but I want to have a piece, I want to be involved and have a piece of that event. And so we could really leverage their gifts of organizing the back of the house, the communication, the creating we had scorecards, right? But we really needed, so that really involved a pretty diverse group of folks in a larger gathering without everybody feeling like they have to be social or they have to show up in a way that is not necessarily aligning with who they are. And so, I mean, I think I'm not there anymore, but I'm pretty sure they have the annual chili cook-off every year still. And there's like somebody was in charge of going to the thrift store and finding like a trophy that they can turn into like a really cheesy trophy that gets passed along every year. And now that became an idea of really, the intention was, how do I get out of having to put this on myself, right, as an obligation of a social event, to now I think 15 years later, it's still an ongoing like fall tradition for the ski corp up there, for that team in particular. But it was a way that's a little bit more organized, but we were going to try it. And if it didn't work, that's cool. We're not going to do it next year, right? Like, I think that's the other piece of this. Like, you have to be willing to try things, and not all of them are going to work. Some of them are going to flop, right? But sometimes there's fun in the flop, and then you have a piece of connection that you can all like really talk about, and you have, that you can hold on to and kind of laugh about. So that's that. Wendy, to your point, like how it had the variety. It really depends on what works for the team.
Yeah, we used to do some silly stuff too. We worked in financial services in a very stressful environment. And we'd have these silly contests and then invite the whole HR department to participate. One was like moving M&Ms from one plate to another plate using a straw, and whoever moved the most M&Ms, won. And we do fundraisings like bake-off contests. And then we had a pastry chef from New York, from one of the New York City restaurants come in to do judging. And we sold the baked goods to the whole company and raised money and donated it to a charity. So I mean, there's a lot of interesting, fun things that you can do.
Yeah, and the end result of all that, what's most important and what people, when it really starts to work, is when people see the benefit of a better business outcome
Mhm.
from their connection they've created with their teammates or their cross-departmental teammates. And so when we can highlight how these aren't just like fluffy things we do to like, make work fun,
Mhm.
but instead it's not something new we do, it's just what we do.
Right, you're building different kinds of relationships.
Right, yeah. So then you can see like, when things, there's a stressful situation or a difficult project, and you can really highlight like how well the team came together based on the the teamwork and the connection that had already been built. The foundation had already been built, so you could really leverage that to when the situation really required it. You weren't trying to do it in a really stressful situation. Instead, you had that foundation to really build upon.
Well, I know we are coming to the top of the hour, so I do want to just take a quick break here to acknowledge our speaker for next week. We're going to have Katja is going to be coming and talking about diverse and authentic leadership, and particularly about creating a career path of your own. And so I think that's one of the hot topics in today's business world is really taking control of your career and driving it, and having a culture and a company that helps and supports that effort. So really excited about hearing her share her presentation next week. Also, as we're closing up here, this has been a great conversation, Erin. And if there's anybody that in our listening group here that wants to ask a question for Erin, please go ahead and put that in the chat. But as we go there, Erin, I mean, if people want to get a hold of you and learn more about creating a community of or these cohesive communities, how can they get a hold of you?
So I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, Erin Hyder. Feel free to email me directly at my work email. It's erin.hyder@durangogov.org. Happy to respond that way too.
The other thing, I know that you're an avid reader, and so you have a couple of books on the shelf right now that you're looking at. What are you reading right now?
Let's see. Well, so for I like the Ultra Running magazine on a personal level, because I feel like if I could absorb the capabilities and the skills and through osmosis of becoming a better ultra runner, I mean, that's my goal. It hasn't worked out quite yet because it seems like you just have to do the work to make that happen. But in preparation, as I mentioned with the summit last week, the theme of the summit was called Leading with Heart. And the keynote speaker at the end of the day was Edward Sullivan, who is one of the authors, along with John Baird, of, I don't know if you can see this because of my thing, but it's called Leading with Heart by John Baird and Edward Sullivan. And so I read that in preparation for the summit to ensure, we are aligned with the discussion. I found it really powerful. They outline 5 different conversations we should be having either with ourselves or with others to really, unlock the culture and results of our teams through a very people-centric approach. So I'd highly recommend it. And like I said, some of the things that they have to say in there are pretty powerful. Lots of great tools in there too of really creating connection throughout our teams.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your wisdom today. It's been a great conversation of learning how to be more cohesive as organizations and developing those communities internally. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm also going to have my teenage kids hear that I have some wisdom.
Good plan.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and see you next week on the People Strategy Forum.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.